And Stu, welcome back to Dreadnought News. And thank you for joining me for another discussion on domestic politics, United States politics, and world issues.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's been another sort of slow boil building up to the upcoming federal election. Some people think it's going to be in April. April 12th was the day I saw floating around. Some people think
Yeah,
May.
well, I don't think he's got too much longer left, right? I can't remember when the last date he has to call it, but it's soon.
It's in May or before the end of the financial year because the new Senate has to be picked by like June 30 or 1st
Well,
of July or whatever.
yeah, but he has to declare. So, like, he's running out of, I think he's got about three available dates left.
Mm.
And he has to declare those a minimum of 6 weeks, I think, before actually
Mm.
holding the election.
Yeah.
Um, so we're going to know when the election is by the second week of February, I would think.
Yeah, he'll have to. Yeah, I mean, everyone knows the election's coming anyway. It's not much suspense. Like, it's gonna be soon. So, whenever it is,
Yeah, but
whenever.
so there, yeah, I mean, let's not mince words. He's hoping and praying and shitting in his pants a little bit that the RBA will cut interest rates, but there just isn't a compelling case for it. There still isn't, and there's unlikely to be.
There
Like,
isn't, but they will cut anyway because the political pressure on the RBA is. I will see how strong Michelle Bullock is. I wasn't a fan of
he's
just.
held strong so far, but I
She's been
mean,
good. See, I thought, oh, this is another DEI pick. Like, why are they getting this government yes woman? And then so far, she's performed well.
she's held the line. Yeah.
She's held the line. She's raised when she's needed to. She hasn't cut before it was necessary. And I still maintain, like, as long as unemployment's still got a three or a four handle in front of it, there's no case for a rate cut. Even if inflation is in the target band, you would only start cutting if inflation rises or if you know if or sorry if
Inflation
I
is dropping. Yeah.
if inflation drops below 2%, like outside of the target band, if it's got a one handle, yeah, you can cut then. Or if unemployment rises above 5%, because 5% is considered full employment. At the moment, it's like
Hmm.
low fours. So if we're under full employment, there's just no
Yeah,
case
although
for
I'm
a rate
I'm
cut.
curious to know what we're doing with those stats. I haven't taken a look at that because look, I mean, let's not mince words. Everyone with two brain cells to rub together knows that the CPI is just a bald-faced lie. The well, you tell me. We've not had a title rate of CPI above 10%, but my shopping has doubled at least.
Oh, this yeah, CPI is completely rigged.
So we have not had 3 years of 7% year on year inflation. That's just a bald-faced lie. Like every aspect of my cost of living has increased far more than 7.7% annually compounding.
I mean,
Far, far.
just
Yeah.
for example, the biggest component of people in Australia's living costs is their rent or their mortgage or
Mm.
whatever, or
Yeah.
like, and house prices have continued to rise, rents have
Yeah.
continued to rise. CPI is like, oh, we're at 3%. Yeah, right. It's like, so uh,
Yeah.
in this house here, the landlord just hit us up with a 7.5% rent increase. It's like, all right. We should be thankful, I guess. It's not 15%, but yeah, it's definitely
Yeah,
risen.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And look, I mean, our prior landlord, we were doing okay, but like the last place, he really only bumped the rent up like stuff all over the time we were there. Meanwhile, rents had gone crazy.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, to get like a place that was not as good, roughly the same size when we ended up having to move, it was like a 200 a week increase
Yeah.
in rent.
Yeah.
So
Like,
yeah, we do not have 3% inflation. That's just a lie.
No. And if they
And
cut the rates now, if they cut the interest
yeah,
rates now, house prices are going to go up even more. And so
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
just, yeah,
That
I thought during
unless
the
they
GFC, I thought during the GFC
unless
we would
they
have a housing
tighten.
crash.
Yeah, well, but I mean, the trouble is, man, is that it's yeah, like economic conditions are terrible, but they keep importing people at 1 million a year.
Mm. Yeah, I saw the
So
Libertarian Party, my party, released their new immigration policy this week, and it's basically a 15-minute video and 8,000 words on immigration's not that big of a problem anyway. So yeah, I'm not fully on board with that, I gotta say.
yeah, I I know, like I read today that the Libertarian Party in the United States has now gone 53 years without winning a single election of any description.
Yeah,
They haven't
we
won
do
a
better
local
than that.
council, they haven't won a state, they haven't won.
So we've got a we've got a Victorian MLC, an upper house guy. We've got a New South Wales upper house guy, and we've got some councillors and stuff. So we're doing better than the US guys, but that's because also the Republican Party does have a strong strain of libertarian.
Libertarian strain, yeah.
Yeah.
And, they're at risk of getting something done.
Yeah. See,
Which
I'm not.
the libertarians, it's yeah. I mean, there's too many fucking people coming in. It's that simple. And we're getting DoorDash riders. We're not getting
They're not sending their finest. No.
no. And these people have got to get housed, and we refuse to have a serious discussion about constructing houses properly. Like the problem could be solved, I would think, fairly quickly. And I mean, I am stealing this idea, but if you could, most of your work in getting dongers up and going would be branding it right. But prefab homes, you can make them real nice these days. So you don't need highly qualified chippies and plumbers and all that shit. Or probably you can't get away without plumbers, but you need a lot less trades, and the actual construction process is much simpler. It's like building Lego. So all you need is the land.
Well,
Um,
we're the biggest island on Earth.
yeah,
We
which
got
we've
plenty of
got.
land.
Yeah. So yeah, we could be banging out tens of thousands of dwellings a week if we were prepared to do prefab houses, not brick and mortar building. But I mean, you would have to get people to agree to it, and the branding of like living in a donga, you'd have to. That's something to overcome. I would not be that interested in living in a. Look, I mean, I'd have to see it. I would not be that interested in living on the suburban rim just because there's only so much of my life I'm willing to dedicate to commuting.
Yeah.
It's already far too high a percentage of my life just moving from office to home and back again. Um, but yeah, I look, I will see what happens, but it's very much a real.
This is my mate. He lives in New Zealand. He's just put up one of these sort of prefab
Yeah,
houses. Like you say, he just did it himself, like over a weekend.
yeah,
It's there.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously that's a super simple one. If you were going to do like a three-bedroom family home, it'd be a bit more complex. But the the overarching point is you undercut the skill shortage
Mm,
that's part of the problem with housing shortages.
mm,
But
mm.
yeah, I mean, look, Libertarian Party, with all due respect, I just we've had this discussion before, but Libertarian parties um, have a very big problem which they do not seem to be willing to take seriously, which is their beliefs are scaffolded on a particular place and culture.
Mm. Yeah.
and you can't just apply it everywhere.
No,
Like,
but maybe not. Yeah, and I agree with you on the social aspects. You can't have like you know, a, a left-wing multicultural communist sort of zeitgeist and sort of just expect libertarianism to be able to work in a social setting. But economically, it is the only way that works. And so there's a recent post on X by Elon Musk, which I'll share with you. He says so it's in response to this guy. He's like a quant, and he made this like browser search tool where you can search through all the government grants, and he was looking all through the government grants. He said he's starting to wonder if we've had a UBI system all along, except just for Democrats. And so if you're a Democrat, you've got a guaranteed income, and it's just disguised as government grants. It's like a universal basic income. And then and so what he's saying is we already know that 13.4% of Americans work directly for the government, but it turns out, a huge number of the non-profit workers are also subsisting entirely off government grants as well. So the real total is like 24%. One quarter of workers in the US are just living off government money. And so the idea of libertarianism is that we just shut all of that down. We just shut all of that down, let the, free enterprise. And that's the aspect of libertarianism which I think can work. As Milei in Argentina is proving, it's a successful way of running an economy.
yeah, look, so I don't disagree with that generally speaking. So if you're here to um decry the left-wing patronage network, and that exists around the world,
Mm.
I would add.
Oh, it's
I would
worse in
say
Europe,
it's
I'm sure. Yeah, yeah.
and worse here. I can tell you from personal experience it is worse here.
Yeah.
Um, but um yeah, I mean take a look at what's Peter Costello's brother's name, Tim Costello?
Yeah, the vision guy.
Yeah, he was working for a charity earning $200,000 a year. What the fuck is charitable about that, Tim? Take me
Yes.
through your version of charity. Let me paint a
That's a
picture for
lot
you.
of
If you
roast
get rich
chickens for
working for a
homeless
charity,
families. Yeah.
yeah, if you get rich working for a charity, it's not a fucking charity. It's that fucking simple.
Yeah.
How are you in the 99th percentile of earning capacity at a fucking charity? Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Yeah,
The
that's bullshit.
yeah. So no, yeah, it's real bad here. And yes, so much of it is through government grants. And a lot of it is like actively harmful to social well-being.
Oh yeah.
Like all the druggy NGOs that operate around the injecting room in Richmond here,
Yeah.
like they're
Extra primary
polluting,
school.
but they're polluting primary school playgrounds with junkies use needles on my tax dollars.
Yeah, exactly. At the public library across the road, literally across the road, they had a drag drag queen story time, paid for by the
Yeah,
rates which I pay, which my rent goes to, funding
yeah.
the rates for them to have
So
a drag
actively
queen.
harming the society.
You walk into
And
the
like,
library, they're in the kids section. They've got like a queer section for kids. What the hell? Like queer,
yeah,
it's like a full display. Like, oh, you might be a bum poker. Have you read this book? You might find out something about yourself. Like,
yeah. Here's some
seriously?
detailed instructions on
Yeah.
how to do that more efficiently. Oh
Yeah.
man, that stuff is bizarre. Like I remember seeing Adam Bant. He's going to keep his seat because inner city Melbourne is Australia's asshole. But the yeah, he was on there talking about like, oh well, this is where this idea of harm reduction. I'm just against it, and it does seem to me like a libertarian idea, generally speaking. So people should be free to do it. Well, okay, but then you've got to go full circle on that, right? Like you should wear the cost of the downside risk, not the state. So yes, you're free to do it, but explain to me exactly why we should pick up the tab for your homeless drug binging. Uh, Yeah, okay, you're free to do it, but you wear the whole package, not just the good bit. Um, but this is that harm reduction idea. Well, we can't stop people from taking drugs. So Adam Bant has applied this at Fitzroy High School to taking nude selfies. So he's an advocate at Fitzroy High School in their sex ed class. Here's how to take naked pictures of yourself and send them over the internet safely. What?
Doesn't
Uh,
belong in a
that-
school. So, but
Yeah,
let me.
well, that strikes me as straightforwardly violating child pornography laws.
Yeah, the libertarians I know are not in favor of that. But let me
Yeah.
provide the libertarian counter argument to the drug issue which you raise. And this is exemplified by the murder in Melbourne yesterday or the day before of some semi-famous bodybuilder, steroid guy, whatever.
Hmm.
Because apparently he was like involved in the illegal tobacco trade or the
Hmm.
tobacco grey market. And the reason why there is an illegal tobacco trade in the first place is because of the ridiculous government taxes like on tobacco, which is like it more than five X's or 10 X's the cost of a
Oh,
packet of
yeah, look,
cigarettes.
on that front, I don't disagree.
If there
Absolutely
wasn't
disagree.
that huge government tax, there wouldn't be the black market, and there wouldn't have been the murder of this. And this guy wouldn't have had been able to get rich in the first place off criminal activities. Like, I'm not sad he's
Yeah,
dead.
yeah.
Like, criminal scumbags can get shot. I don't care, but we don't want that sort of violence on the streets to start off with. We don't want those criminals to.
Yeah, no. So I guess, but and this is part of where the libertarian argument I think breaks down a little bit. Like, I agree with you that in my opinion, it's not, the taxes don't bear any semblance of a sensible relationship to the cost of healthcare associated with smoking. I simply refuse to believe that.
They're just an easy
Um,
target for revenue raising. That's all.
yeah, I think it's been socially stigmatized hard enough that you can just tax the balls out of it, and the people who are still smoking are addicts, and all the Karens out there are going, well, you know. But in a properly libertarian society, if you do something I mean, look, the same argument applies to alcohol, I suppose, but if you do something that is actively harmful to your health, an insurance company, in the first place, you should be either self-insuring or insuring against the risk. It's nobody else's responsibility. If you go down the libertarian road, your health is your responsibility. So if you smoke and fuck your lungs up, if you can't pay for lung cancer treatment, whose fucking fault is that? Um, and two, the market should be able to price it adequately.
You're sounding like a libertarian here.
Yeah, so yeah, but I don't see the libertarians going down this road of like, well, we'll scrap Medicare, we'll abolish the tax.
The only
Uh,
reason we don't is
but
because we know it's so unpopular. Because people have been propagandized to believe in socialism, from a medical perspective, so much
yeah,
since
yeah, yeah.
Whitlam.
But
I agree 100% what
so
you're saying.
yeah, so I think you would have to go the whole way, and I don't think you can go the whole way on various things.
You can't.
So
For example, the NHS, Brit, the British people would rather, their island sunk into the North Sea rather than give up their NHS. And it will kill their economy. It will, because socialism
well,
is
it
a
is killing
cancer.
their economy.
It
It's
is.
like our,
It's not going to
it's
get
like
better.
our,
It's going to get worse and worse. And the NHS will kill their economy completely. It will take up 100% of tax revenue. It will. Socialism
But
is a
probably
cancer.
it would probably, once you start getting like the satellite spending into it, it probably is already close to that.
And the
And to be
Medicare
honest,
is
like
not
I will have to
too far
say,
behind
like the
the
wife
NDIS.
has nothing to say but positive things about the NHS. So when she was in England, she was well treated. She was treated quickly and effectively, and it didn't cost her a cent. So she had a positive experience. My experience of the NHS was that it was slow to the point of not being worth it. Um, in no way, shape, or form interested in preventative medicine. So they're so stretched that they have to triage and only deal with the serious stuff, which means they're catching almost nothing before it becomes an emergency. So they end up treating it in the most inefficient,
Hmm.
expensive way, both in a cash sense and in the personal toll sense. Um, I, yeah, it's just a catastrophe as far as I'm concerned. Um, but yeah, and I would have no problem with it going. But a different example um, is a navy, for example. So global trade is predicated on someone having a big fuck off navy. And there's no real way to do that privately in a way that people will buy into, or I think can be done reasonably. So, like, can you imagine if the American Navy was a private navy? I mean, that
Not
person would
really.
just declare themselves king of the world and fuck you, fight me. Make me. Make
Yeah.
me give up my crown.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't happen. And then there's a whole part of like a satellite economy around that. And this is what I was reading with Jackie Fisher's biography.
Hmm.
They would deliberately diversify arms on a ship to ensure they had security of supply chain, which has an effect, an unnatural effect, an intentional unnatural effect on the economy. So your libertarian would come through there and say, well, it's just... okay, sure, but if you don't have a real navy, all the trade that it enables goes away.
Okay. So moderate libertarians, like
Yeah.
myself, believe the
Mm.
government has, defense
Yeah.
is and naval sort of that aspect is a legitimate function of government, and so is legal funding the courts, funding the judges, funding the police force, the prosecutors, all that. That's a legitimate function of government. But so, for example, Medicare is not, NDIS is not, welfare is not, especially not like this guy was saying, basically a UBI for Democrats and Democrats only. And this is what I get annoyed with, is because I fight with libertarians about this exact issue often. Is that our enemies are using, when they get the chance, they are using every aspect of the power of the state to further their cause. And then when we get in, it's just like, oh no, we're not doing that. We're above that. No. And then it's got this ratchet effect. When they're in power, they just ratchet, ratchet, ratchet. And then it never ratchets back the other way. It's like locked in because we refuse to use the power of the state because we're libertarians. We don't do that.
Yeah,
And I
yeah, yeah.
disagree with that.
Yeah, and that's where I can't. I just simply cannot take them seriously. And the other aspect of it is that, as I said, it's predicated on libertarianism is predicated, and extracting this admission from a hardcore libertarian is like pulling teeth. But libertarianism as an idea can only function in a society, a high trust society that has a particular set of values and taboos. Um, so here's a prime example. Growing up, I don't know if you cop this, but growing up, every single member of both sides of my family had a huge taboo about getting job seeker. No, I'm not a dole bludger, won't take the dole. So there was a safety net there, but it was balanced out by a very strong social taboo that you don't take it. So people who were taking it were really up against it. So if you've out of work for a few weeks, you dip into your savings, get back into work as fast as you can. That taboo is now totally gone. And so you have people who will stay on Centrelink. They'll just move from Centrelink payment to Centrelink payment. And
No, they'll get a mental health diagnosis and go into the NDIS. That's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
they'll
yeah. So, but
do.
my point is that a libertarian doesn't have a way, except for changing laws, to deal with that issue. So, I don't think a libertarian would be totally opposed to a reasonable safety net. Like,
Look, where
if
incentive,
you,
where in,
if you lose your
where,
job and become illiquid, um, is it reasonable that you should have to have your house foreclosed?
yes, yeah, let the
I think
market
it's
decides.
unreasonable.
No, that if there needs to be a safety net, then join the army. That's what the safety net is. And if you're too much of a druggo to join the army, then guess what? Too bad, lose your house. No, seriously. No, there's no free lunch, and humans respond to economic incentives. We're
Yeah,
economic
I get
rationalists.
that. I get that. But the trouble is that if you really go down that road, then other things that are predicated on, such as military, like why should I stump up any of my tax dollars for the military? I don't see a direct result from that. And our military loses almost everything all of the time. So we haven't won a war since World War II. So I'm paying a lot of money for this kind of shitty army.
No,
Um,
we liberated
so
East Timor. What are you talking about?
yeah, which when they can't shoot back and believe in vampires, we kick some ass. But outside of that, yeah. Um, so I think, yeah, like it's difficult to a lot of things in society um, would not run if everyone is relying on their strict legal rights. So the rights that we have in society carved out, and this is well understood in judicial circles. So this is part of the reason that judges have such broad discretion is the everybody like I mean we need to have laws to prevent unlawful conduct. Exactly where that line is drawn is unclear, but it is probably pretty true to say that all Australians are in violation of some regulation at all times. So if everyone insists on their strict legal rights all of the time, society becomes ungovernable and you can't regulate with that level of precision. It just cannot be done. So,
Yeah, so all these laws need to be repealed. I agree. That is in practically what is happening in effect,
yeah, but if you repeal
and it's a
all laws,
travesty.
then society just ends.
Oh, you just have the
Society
10.
would not
You have
work.
the 10 commandments. There's you got 10 laws. That's it. Done. Seriously.
Yeah, so but look, I mean, we are massively overregulated in Australia. I would be very happy to see our statute books reduced by 50% at least. But you have to have some basic level of laws. So, for example, like a good example of this is that we've proven over and over again that if we didn't have speed limits and we didn't have rules governing which side of the road to drive on, people would drive at 140 k's everywhere on any side of the road that they want. It just would happen. So, like, societies are based, like, libertarians need to rely on, and this is the smuggle in part of a high trust society that they themselves don't have any way of propagating the values that would facilitate a high trust society. So, for example, I would assume your mates are like, unlimited immigration is amazing, bring them all in. Is there any requirement that
They want to
be,
sell it by
and
anyone can
undertake
come
an oath
if they pay
and undertake
40K.
an oath to abide by Australian values, and that's a condition of their residency. If you refuse to uphold this set of values, gone. I don't think there's a libertarian argument to be made there. I don't. You have to have some conception of an overarching collective body politic that is entitled to flex its muscles. And I just don't see how libertarians get there. I really have never heard a particularly plausible libertarian argument. At some point, you have to gear shift to a body politic collective collective decision making. And at that point,
Yeah. No, I
that's
agree.
the conceit, right?
You've 100% hit the nail on the head. But at the same time, I still think economically speaking, slashing the size and scope of government is the only way. And you know what? I used to be a member of the Liberal Party, and guess what? Josh Frydenberg permanently, permanently increased the size and scope of government. He was the worst treasurer, and I was no fan of Wayne Swan, but Josh Frydenberg and Morrison, they just completely trashed the Liberal. I think they did a worse job than Malcolm Turnbull, and I quit the Liberal Party because of Malcolm Turnbull. So, and I think Morrison and Frydenberg were worse. So, so
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, what do you mean permanently? Because nothing's permanent in parliamentary politics.
JobKeeper, all of that increased government spending, just like entrenching that they further funded the NDIS, they further
Oh,
funded this
yeah, look, I mean,
ridiculous national cabinet. Like, what the hell? They just
yeah, no, look, on that stuff, I'm inclined to agree with you. I think I don't know exactly how the JobKeeper, what they were going to do. I, it would have been a brave man, um, to just say let it rip, even though,
they lost the election anyway. Okay, so brave or not, they got wiped out
oh,
anyway.
yeah, no, 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 no. Look, Morrison after those bushfires was in trouble anyway. So let's keep that in mind. But I'm inclined to agree with you. So as a Victorian who generally speaking votes Liberal, um, I didn't preference the Liberal Party first in the election just gone. I can't remember who I preferenced first. It could have been Army United. Oh, I'm not sure who was there in my electorate. But it was because I felt like I was in an abusive relationship with the Liberal Party.
But
Like,
Peter Dunn took the wrong he took the wrong answer from the loss in 2022. He thought, it's because we were too right wing and I need to moderate, I need to appeal to women. No, and Peter Credlin tore Andrew Clennell on Sky News last night to
I
shreds
saw that,
for
yeah.
saying that. That's not the lesson. There's been a vibe shift. We just had to get rid of Morrison and Frydenberg because Morrison was a creep and Frydenberg was a yes man. That's the only reason, not because they were too right wing, because they weren't.
They were not right wing enough. Yeah. The I think and also look, I mean Australia was having a bit of a moment, so that there's got to be that. Like we were
Yeah.
we were in the middle of look, I mean the entire world has had this about decade long flirting with communism, which I'm very glad. I think it really is going. I think we are seeing it out the
At
back door. It's not
least
going as fast or as
at
firm as I was like, but
Anglo-Saxon males are really coming out strongly against communism, which isn't always the case. If you look in our friend group, there's like a lot of people who look exactly like us who are communist. So, but the younger cohort than us are totally rejecting that, and I think that's a good development.
yeah, and also though the people who do accept it in our friend group have a very particular educational profile.
Yeah,
So,
and it goes back to I didn't get a good job for decades until I joined the Navy and you got trained up. Whereas these other people, they got funneled down that UBI for leftists sort of um
mm,
that funnel. And so their
mm,
livelihood depends on it. So yeah,
they're never going to vote against it. Yeah, which is the strategy of left-wing politics the world over. That's
exactly.
it, yeah, and so yeah, it would be good to see a Liberal Party PM just go. You know what? I'm gonna run with. Everyone really does have the memory of a goldfish. And in those first 100 days, I'm just gonna ram motherfucking shit through.
That's what
So
Trump's doing, and it's just so refreshing to see. But
yeah,
yeah,
and
Dutton.
by the time we're fighting a next election, there'll be new issues to fight it on, and
But see,
and things
that's
like
That's not what
Look,
Dutton will do
a
because
prime example.
Dutton is a center leftist man. And I listed it out. He doesn't want to bring us out of Paris, the Paris Climate Accords. All right. He wants to pursue net zero. He believes, oh, we need more women in leadership positions. That's not a right wing idea. That's a left. That's Dutton is a centre leftist. Who's the deputy leader of the Liberal Party? What's her name? Susan Lee.
Stephen Lane.
Pretty
Yeah.
useless. A true right wing choice for deputy leader of the Liberal Party would be Henry Pike. He is the Australian JD Vance. Henry
Yeah, yeah.
Pike.
Look, I mean, look here. So, for example, don't get me wrong. The idea that we need just arbitrarily more women in leadership, I disagree with that fundamentally.
Yeah,
I,
but the Liberals don't. That's their
yeah,
policy.
like, but if Peter Credlin was running a campaign as a candidate for PM,
She's on merit though.
she'd be pretty. She wouldn't have to work too hard to stitch my vote up.
No, but
The,
she has merit. She's not running on. Oh, we
Yeah,
need more
yeah, yeah,
women
yeah.
herself.
And she would refuse to run that way, which I think
Yeah,
is that much more
no,
impressive.
exactly. Margaret Thatcher was the greatest British Prime Minister since Churchill. And since
Yeah,
then, no one has matched her. Now, that's not because she's a woman. And in fact, the left hates her. And all the
but
feminists hate her.
they hate her. Yeah,
That's what I mean. Like, yeah, that's right wing. That's right wing, where we're not going to penalize you for being a woman, but you definitely don't get just to say, oh, I'm a woman, so that means I deserve to be the deputy leader. Like, get straight out
yeah,
of here.
yeah. But just as an example, if you were to if he was in the first 100 days, just kill the ABC,
Yeah,
just get rid of it.
yeah.
By the time the next election comes around and people have realized, oh yeah, we never watched that fucking thing anyway. You know what I mean? They're like, and oh well, but how are we gonna get regional news? That's the radios and there's bushfires. Like, I don't fucking know. Figure it out. It's not that goddamn difficult. It, it doesn't have to be a government thing. It's never needed to be a government thing. And okay, let's take you at your word. Now you're allowed to have exactly one national radio station that only works during bushfires. The cost of running that, you're allowed to have.
So you sound
Everything
like a
else,
libertarian now, and I take the other
yeah.
view, which we've only got a minute left, so I'll say it quickly. But I don't think we should abolish the ABC because I'm not a full blown libertarian. I believe when we take power as the right wing, we need to use state power to advance our interests. So I would cut, and we have to be fair about it as well, though. So I would cut the ABC budget back to exactly the same level as SBS, and I would let SBS continue on as the far left globalist organization that it is. And to counterbalance that, I would stuff ABC to the gills with hardcore right wing conservatives at every single level, from the janitor to the managing director. That's what I would do.
I would just get rid of them both because I think they're an anachronism. Uh, Take a look at like uh, Trump. Trump kicked everyone's head in just with Twitter. There's simply no need for it. You can campaign directly to people now.
He's a
What is the
genius.
purpose of the intermediary? Just get rid of it.
Trump is a genius, though. Anyway, we're going to get kicked off now, but that was a really stimulating discussion. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it, Stu. So I'll,
Yeah,
I'll
no,
let
it's
you go and
good.
I'll see you next week. Thanks for that.
All right. See ya.